Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here at Umass Dartmouth. Today is an exciting day. We have the opportunity to talk with someone who is not currently on our planet. How often can you say you've had that type of opportunity? It is amazing to see how humanity has come so far in such a short period of time. I remember watching the moon landing on a fuzzy black and white TV, no bigger than an iPad, and it only had 3 channels, young people. Soon we will be able to hear from Captain Scott Tingle, live from outer space in color. Captain Tingle graduated from UMass Dartmouth in 1987. A mechanical engineering student, Tingle knew from an early age that he wanted to explore the cosmos, that he wanted to explore space. Captain Tingle is perhaps the best example I've ever seen of dedication, passion, and follow-through. Many people have dreams when they're young, but life often takes them on a different path. However, Captain Tingle knew what he wanted, and he worked hard. He did not give up, and he realized his dream. I am proud to say that our institution played a role in part of that journey. UMass Dartmouth is currently playing a part in the lives of thousands of people who are seeking to pursue their dreams and to pursue their passions, including many of you. So listen closely to Captain Tingle's words, but pay attention to the bigger picture, the bigger story of his life. From a kid in a rock band in southeastern Massachusetts to a NASA astronaut viewing our planet from afar, Scott Tingle is a success story for the ages. Maybe we have future astronauts in this very auditorium who will be the first to walk on another planet, like Mars. As evident by our special guest, anything is possible when you work hard and you dream big. Thank you again for joining us today. At this time, I would like to introduce our interim dean of the College of Engineering, Ram, my good friend Ram. Come on up.
Thank you, Chancellor Johnson, and thank you all for joining us today. The College of Engineering is incredibly proud to count NASA astronaut and 1987 graduate Scott Tingle among our alumni. Today's live downlink with Scott aboard the International Space Station is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us all. As your moderator, I have a couple of logistical announcements. The first one is we learned yesterday that this event is really not a secret. So feel free to take as many pictures as you want, your videos, post them on Facebook, Instagram, Snap, or tweet. The only thing we ask is that you include the hashtag UMassD in space and hashtag STEM on station. In case you can't remember that, there are 2 signs on the side so you can see what you want to include. The other thing is once we begin the downlink exactly at 12:30, those doors will be closed. So now is a really good time if you want to take a bathroom break and be back in your seats by the time the event begins. And one of the volunteers can help you with the direction. So at this time, I'd like to welcome Scott's mom, who's joined us today, Mrs. Sheila Tingle, to the podium to share a few words. Please.
Hello to everyone, and thank you, Chancellor Johnson, faculty, students, alumni, and special guests for inviting me to this special event today. Special thanks to Laura Stone and Chief Emil for their extra considerations. If Scott were here today instead of me, he would say 3 things, and he'd deliver them with much more elegance. First, he would give a big shout out to Professor DePippo and Professor Rice for their support and guidance which he received while he was a student here. I know they will always hold a special place in his heart. To all of you students, he would remind you to take full advantage of all this extraordinary university has to offer you. He would tell you to work hard, study hard, stay focused. Stay focused are his 2 favorite words. And never, never give up on your dream. Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege for me to be here today.
Thank you, Mrs. Tingle, for your inspiring remarks. What a remarkable experience this must be for you, watching your son's professional dreams come true. At this point, I'd like to invite our state representative and alum of Umass School of Law, Christopher Marquis, as well as Chancellor Johnson, to join us here at the podium to present Scott Tingle with a special citation by the legislature. Mrs. Tingle, I'd like you to accept this.
Good afternoon, everyone. I feel actually pretty tall next to Mrs. Tingle, but it's not often that happens. I would just like to say that one of the things, speaking with Sheila just moments before, is figuring out a couple things. There's one thing that is absolutely amazing is the perseverance of Scott to get to the point where he is. That means he never, truly never, ever, ever gave up. And when I see all the students here, when things aren't going well, and it may be a day, it may be an hour, it may be 2 weeks, don't ever give up. Keep focused on what you really want to do, because it will happen if you persist in doing that. So on behalf of the House of Representatives, I have a citation that I will read quickly, hopefully, and get you to understand. It says, "Be it hereby known to all that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offers its sincerest congratulations to Massachusetts native, NASA astronaut, and captain of the Navy, Scott Tingle, a 1987 alumnus of Umass Dartmouth, in recognition of his outstanding contributions to science and engineering, for representing our nation across the world, and his selfless commitment to educating others through his mission aboard the International Space Station. The entire membership extends its best wishes and expresses the hope for future good fortune and continued success in all endeavors." Signed, Speaker Robert DeLeo and State Representative Chris Markey. Let me head out this way.
Thank you, Chris Markey, for that citation. At this point, I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Ron DePippo, also known as the Terminator, one of the faculty of Scott Tingle and a mentor.
That's Terminator, as in thermodynamics. Well, it's a real pleasure to speak to you today. With apologies to Robert Frost for taking liberty with his famous poem, "Two roads diverged in a wood, and I, Scott Tingle, took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference." There is no question in my mind that Scott in his life has deliberately chosen the different and more challenging path. I'm reminded also of the notion of the principle or path of least resistance. It's not quite up to the level of a second law of thermodynamics, but close. We all know about the path of least resistance. We see rivers flowing to the sea, by the most direct route under gravity. For us, it usually means getting things done with the least effort. That's how most of us organize our lives. Not Scott. I speak from my knowledge of Scott Tingle from 1983, when he first showed up at SMU. He came from Blue Hills Voc Tech, and our admissions people, guided by the path of least resistance, admitted him to the program that they felt was best for his background, the engineering technology program. But Scott had a different idea. He already knew his goal in life, to be an astronaut. Scott was 4 years old when Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. That must have made an impression on him. So when at age 18, he came to enroll in his courses here as a freshman, he knew he needed that engineering degree, and he lobbied us, me in particular, to let him take the more challenging engineering program. We did. And he succeeded. No path of least resistance for Scott. After earning his bachelor's degree here, he went to Purdue, a tough engineering school with a reputation for turning out astronauts. He's the 23rd so far. He succeeded. After working at the Aerospace Corporation in California, where he also succeeded, he joined the U.S. Navy, earned a commission in 1991, and he became a test pilot, flying Hornets and Super Hornets, F-18s. Now, usually jets land on solid ground, but the ones that Scott flew often had to land on aircraft carriers in the middle of some ocean. A thrilling experience, I'm sure. Well, Scott made a few of those landings, 750 to be exact. Actually, in the Navy, they don't call them landings. They call them arrestments, because you can't stop a Hornet landing on an aircraft carrier. Going too fast, runway's too short. So you have a hook at the end of your plane, and it grabs a wire when you hit the deck, and it arrests you. It's probably the only time you're happy to be arrested. Well, in 2009, after many attempts, NASA finally selected Scott for the last flight of the space shuttle to the International Space Station. His dream was in sight. Back then, we had our own launch vehicles. But he trained for the mission, and in 2011, something bad happened. We ended the space shuttle program, and his mission was canceled. Undeterred, Scott continued his training, and finally, after 9 years in training, he finally flew to the ISS on December 17 last year, with a boost from a Russian Soyuz rocket. So for now, he lives and works in that strange-looking contraption, 254 miles above us, traveling over 17,000 miles an hour. In January, he carried out a spacewalk, 7.5 hours. The U.S. Navy, earned a commission in 1991, and he became a test pilot, flying Hornets and Super Hornets, F-18s. Now, usually jets land on solid ground, but the ones that Scott flew often had to land on aircraft carriers in the middle of some ocean. A thrilling experience, I'm sure. Well, Scott made a few of those landings, 750 to be exact. Actually, in the Navy, they don't call them landings. They call them arrestments, because you can't stop a Hornet landing on an aircraft carrier. Going too fast, runway's too short. So you have a hook at the end of your plane, and it grabs a wire when you hit the deck, and it arrests you. It's probably the only time you're happy to be arrested. Well, in 2009, after many attempts, NASA finally selected Scott for the last flight of the space shuttle to the International Space Station. His dream was in sight. Back then, we had our own launch vehicles. But He trained for the mission, and in 2011, something bad happened. We ended the space shuttle program, and his mission was canceled. Undeterred, Scott continued his training, and finally, after 9 years in training, he finally flew to the ISS on December 17 last year, with a boost from a Russian Soyuz rocket. So for now, he lives and works in that strange-looking contraption, 254 miles above us, traveling over 17,000 miles an hour. In January, he carried out a spacewalk, 7.5 hours. Only 208 people have ever executed a spacewalk. 157 of those were wearing U.S. spacesuits, and Scott is one of them. No doubt about it, Scott Tingle has traveled the road less taken, and it has made all the difference in his life. Godspeed, Astromaker. Godspeed, Scott Tingle.
Thank you so much, Dr. DePippo, for sharing your story about your relationship with Scott. Please join me in welcoming another faculty member of Scott Tingle, Dr. John Rice, retired professor.
Good afternoon, everyone. I remember Scott. I was a young professor at the time. I just started. I believe he started a year before I did in the department, and I came a year later. But Scott was a type of student that would approach faculty, and I can remember him coming into my office frequently for advice. And as an educator, part of our job is to challenge students. And Scott wanted to switch programs. At that time, we had two programs, a technology and a mechanical engineering program. And he was admitted early on to the technology program, which required, it's just important as mechanical engineering, but required less math background. And I remember telling Scott that I needed to challenge him. He was going into a tough program. It was going to be tough, but he was the type of student that wanted a challenge, was up to it, and had the perseverance was a characteristic that I saw in him early on. And we also, as educators, often track students. I heard a recent talk by Jaylen Brown of the Celtics. He was speaking at Harvard about how students, particularly minority students, get into tracks. And Scott's a perfect example of being in a track, that technology program, but he wanted to jump out of that lane. He wanted to go into engineering, because he knew that that was a pathway to becoming an astronaut. So it's a good example for your students out there. When someone challenges you, you need to accept the challenge and to reach your goals, to reach your potential. And just in closing, I would like to say that we're proud of you, Scott. And we'll be talking to you soon.
Thank you, John, for sharing those remarks about Scott as well. Thank you all in the audience for being here today, and to all our speakers. We're about to go live with NASA. Just be patient while we complete the NASA protocols. So I think we're slightly ahead of schedule. So we'll complete the connections in a few minutes.
Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Houston Station, we are ready for the event.
University of Massachusetts Dartmouth, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is University of Massachusetts Dartmouth. How do you hear me?
University of Massachusetts Dartmouth.
Hello, Umass Dartmouth. It is great to be with you today. I have you loud and clear. How me?
Thank you, Scott. The University of Massachusetts Dartmouth is proud to host this live satellite conversation with one of our most esteemed alumni, NASA astronaut Scott Tingle. Scott graduated as a mechanical engineer from a College of Engineering in 1987. He is an example of the outstanding quality of a UMass Dartmouth education and of the individual attention our faculty provide to help students achieve their dreams. UMass D is ranked as a Tier 1 National Research University, and we distinguish ourselves by offering a private college educational experience and public university value. Our first question will be asked by Chancellor Robert Johnson.
Captain Tingle, what advice would you offer to the class of 2018 as they graduate and go out into the world?
Hello, Chancellor Johnson. Thanks for chatting with me today. It's really cool to connect with the folks back home, back where I came from. It's truly an honor. The advice I would give to the graduating class, just like I give to my kids who are, one of my son is graduating this year as well. When you go out and you want to be successful, you're going to have to work hard. It doesn't matter what discipline you're in or where you go, you're going to have to work hard. So set your goals high. Pick the hard jobs, and don't be afraid to work hard. You will succeed. Just go for it.
Thank you.
Our next question will be asked by a young lady by the name of Sheila from Randolph.
Hi, Scott. It's Mom. We are so proud of you, and I'm so honored to participate with everyone here at UMass Dartmouth. Will you please show us your best microgravity trick or flip?
Mom, that's cheating. I didn't know you were going today.
Question will be asked by the Terminator.
Hey, Scotty, congratulations on a perfect launch. I watched your launch live on NASA TV, and you and the other two astronauts looked very relaxed during the whole launch sequence, including the liftoff. I expected all those G's to show, but you seemed not bothered. How did that feel?
Hey, Ron, it is great to see you today, to hear you. You can see me, I cannot see you, but I can hear you just great. The launch was phenomenal. It's absolutely wonderful. Everything went like clockwork. The Russians have a great system, very smooth ride all the way up to low Earth orbit. The little secret is that we were so tired that we probably couldn't have been stressed even if something bad was going on. But we only pull about 4.5 Gs at the most on a nominal ascent into low Earth orbit, and we were on our backs. So all in all, it's not too bad.
Our next question will be asked by UMass D student Matthew Curtis.
In order to see over the horizon, in your opinion, what is the most important piece of technology used on the ISS to advance the human understanding of space, and how do you think this knowledge will impact future generations?
Well, one of the things that we need to understand more about space, just in general, is dark energy, dark matter, antimatter, and also radiation. Radiation is a big factor for when we go to Mars. We have to learn how to protect ourselves. We have to learn what we're getting into for when we're traveling in space for a couple of years at a time. For this reason, we have the alpha magnetic spectrometer mounted on one of the trusses out here on the space station, and it's part of a very big research project. It involves 16 countries and lots of scientists that are mining data from it, from the results, and doing a lot of research. If we can crack the nut on how to protect ourselves from the intense radiation that we will face when we go to Mars, that'll be a huge step forward.
Our next question will be asked by UMass student Devaj Ramsamoj.
What types of training do you need to complete to become an astronaut?
Well, it all kind of depends what you mean by training. But from the time frame that you're selected as an astronaut, you have to go through basics training where they teach you a little bit about the space systems that we're currently using, whether it's a launch vehicle, the crew return capsule vehicle, or the International Space Station. We have to learn how to do spacewalks or EVAs, extra vehicle activities. We also have to learn how to control robotic arms, because there's a lot of work we do outside that we use robotic arms for. And we have to learn other languages. I spent 8 years studying and trying to learn Russian language. It's still a process and work, but again, it's a necessary skill that we need for our international partnership. Then once you get assigned, you have some very specific, detailed training to do. All the while that we're doing physical training, we're flying in the T-38s, and we're learning how to spacewalk in the pool at the Neutral Buoyancy Lab. So lots of training to do.
Our next question will be asked by Samuel Oval, third grader at Alma Del Mar Charter School, for UMass student Thomas Donahue.
What happened in your life that made you want to become an astronaut?
Well, our country walked on the moon. That's what happened.
Our next question will be asked by Ivy Sally for our fellow UMass student Alex Larimore.
How did the degree in engineering you received from UMass Dartmouth prepare you for your future and where you are today?
Well, I'll tell you, I've been in technical fields pretty much since I got to high school. And I've had engineering jobs, I've had jobs as a pilot, I've had jobs as a test pilot, I've had leadership and management type jobs in systems engineering, and I've had this job as an astronaut. And the one thing that I have always come back to is a good understanding of the fundamentals of math, the fundamentals of science, fundamentals of engineering, and I learned that right there at UMass Dartmouth.
Our next question will be asked by UMass student Jessica Dunn.
What measures can be taken for emergencies in space, such as experiencing a cardiac arrest and needing CPR, or needing a blood transfusion from a trauma?
Well, the best things that we can do is avoid that situation. So when we select astronauts and folks to fly in space, we screen them pretty deeply and pretty intensely to make sure that they're healthy, and we're going to minimize the risk of anything happening. We also train ourselves so that if we come up here and an off chance something does happen, we're able to work with it. We're trained in how to do CPR. We're trained in how to sew up our buddies in case they get a laceration. We're trained to offer first aid in many, many different scenarios. And we actually train in an emergency room for a couple of weekends, helping real life people. And a short story, the one patient I had come in had his ear that had been cut off in a fight, and I actually sewed it on for him. So it was a pretty neat experience.
Our next question will be asked by UMass student Jeremy Dyer.
Do you ever get bored in space, and did you receive training for dealing with the frustration that comes along with it before going into space?
I can honestly tell you that I have not been bored yet. They keep us very busy. We always have maintenance to do. We always have some science to do, and we also have some things that we're thinking about on our personal to-do list. So we're always pushing to try to get a little bit more sleep, and being bored is not one of them. If we do have a couple of minutes, there's a big window that we like to look out called the cupola, and we can get a good look at Earth. As far as the frustration goes, probably about the same amount of frustration that you're going to have in any other workplace. It might be elevated at certain times because we tend to try to work a little bit over capacity so that we can keep everybody happy. But other than that, and we have each other to talk to, and we have phone calls we can make to our family members at home once in a while. So it all helps, and it's all normal.
Our next question will be asked by UMass D student David Ferrenti.
Were you able to bring personal items up to space? If so, how did you decide what to take with you?
We have a very small allotment that we can bring. I've deployed a lot with my previous jobs in the U.S. Navy, so I didn't really feel like I needed to bring a whole lot. But I wanted to bring some things for my family and my friends and my colleagues. And since UMass are my friends, I brought this shirt. And I brought this little 3D printed item that they gave me. And so I'm flying that, and we'll get some pictures of it, and I'll bring it back to you when I come back.
Our next question will be asked by UMass D student Olivia Brochu.
What is the most important thing you learned before going to space?
Well, the most important thing I learned is that this whole flying in space thing, there's a lot of systems, there's a lot of things that you need to know, but it's really about the people. And if you have a good relationship with the people on the ground, the people up here and your crew, everything's going to be okay. That was the most important thing.
Our next question will be asked by Olivia Covino for fellow UMass D student Kyra Makaroko.
Do you dream differently in space?
I don't think so. I'm not a big dreamer anyway, and I don't remember having any dreams up here. By the time I get into bed, I'm usually pretty tired, and I fall asleep pretty quick. But if I do have a dream, I'll make sure I write it down, and I'll pass it off to the folks at home so that we can communicate what it was like.
Our next question will be asked by Marky Myers for fellow UMass D student Jake Wilkinson.
Throughout your career path, how have you contended with naysayers who may have told you that you could not be an astronaut?
That used to just be fuel for the fire for me. When I would hear that, I would very quietly go, oh, okay. And I would just find more resolve, and I would work harder, and I would dig in harder, and I would keep my speed up so when I got to the barriers that I could go either through them or around them.
Our next question will be asked by UMass D student Brendan Coveney.
How many days did it take for your body to get acclimated to the microgravity, and what sensations did you feel while first on the ISS?
So I did a 2.5-day rendezvous. So from the time to launch to the time I got to ISS was 2.5 days. On the second day, I was feeling pretty good. My body adjusts fairly easily to extreme environments. I'm very lucky, I think, in that respect. But I do remember for the first day and the first night that I was feeling like I was in an airplane and flying upside down. And being a pilot, I was okay with that. It seemed kind of fun to me. But after 2.5 days, when we first got to the station, it was, I was moving around pretty good. I was feeling pretty good. I wasn't feeling sick at all. And I was pretty much acclimated. About a week after I got here, all my systems were running just perfectly, just like they were on Earth.
Our next question will be asked by UMass D student Jose Munguia.
What advice can you give to a student who fear that we might not accomplish our future goals?
So when you set a goal, you don't set the goal because it's easy. You set the goal because it's a challenge. And with any challenge, there's always a risk that you're not going to get there. on your first try, maybe your second try, or maybe your third try. So don't fear failure. That failure is your time, it's your moment to learn how to do it better so that when you can come back, you can do it better or a little differently and have a better result.
Our next question will be asked by UMass staff member Jamie Jacquard.
As one of only a small number of people who gets to see our planet from space, how has this perspective affected you in terms of shift in your spiritual, environmental, or humanitarian outlook?
I loved people a lot before I got here, but I'll tell you that this experience has reinforced that for sure. I was just sitting in our cupola looking out at the window as we were crossing Cape Town, South Africa, and I was thinking to myself, wow, we humans are really lucky. We've got a beautiful place to live. And so up here, you don't see borders, you don't see different nationalities, and so it really is a beautiful planet and a beautiful place to live. But I also say that the training program, we're involved with 16 countries. We train actively in 4 or 5 different countries, and meeting people all over the world. People are people. It doesn't matter where they come from or what they do. They're just people, and we all need the same things to survive. And one of those things we need are each other. And so that's the big realization, I think, when involved in this whole process we call human spaceflight.
Our next question will be asked by UMass D student Elaine Sanchez for UMass D/Swain alum Don Viola.
I think the question on everyone's mind today is, what's the food really like up there?
The food is really good. Last night I had a little lasagna. We heated it up, and it tasted really good. This morning I had some oatmeal with apples and cinnamon, and it warmed up really good. We added a little bit of water to rehydrate it. And the drinks come in a little drink bag with pre-mixed solutions, and you add water and drink them. And all in all, it's not bad. My diet is probably a lot healthier up here than it is back at home. So I'm pretty thankful for the folks we have that put our food together.
Our next question will be asked by middle school student Amelia Gerlach.
I'm an almost 13-year-old middle school girl and already know that I love space and want to be an astrophysicist or a cosmologist. When did your love of space start, and how?
Well, first of all, congratulations on knowing what your interest is and what you might want to do when you get older. That's a huge accomplishment, and it'll help you set your path and how you want to go about learning the things that you're going to learn. And that the journey will be fantastic. You'll learn things that you never even thought about, and it'll just become life-defining for you. So I figured it out when I was very young. My mom always tells a story about me being 4 years old and deciding to be an astronaut. By the time I really realized that it was a firm goal, I was about 10 or 11 years old. So I, like you, had that early bug and knowing what I wanted to be. So good for you, and don't let go.
Our next question will be asked by Adakan Akam for UMass D alum Joan Sawyer.
What earthly perk or privilege do you miss the most in space?
I miss running water. Up here we have good water and drink bags and things, but in microgravity the water doesn't flow; it just floats, and if it breaks up, it makes a mess. And it sticks to things, so we have to take showers and clean ourselves with wet towels and things like that. But I do miss running water. We'll get that soon enough.
Our next question will be asked by UMass D student James Cowgill.
Have you or anyone you know of ever attempted to artistically paint in space before? Or how would painting on the space station be different than on Earth?
We've had some astronauts on the International Space Station that were artists as a hobby, and some of them have turned semi-professional after leaving the astronaut corps. So I don't have detailed knowledge, but I'm sure that they painted up here, and I know that one person did. And the difference would be that the paint would not run because there's no gravity. It would ball up with the surface tension, and you have to move it around and stick, and you got to be very careful that you don't make a mess. So I think if they did it, they probably did it on a very small scale so that they would not have a big mess to clean up.
Our next question will be asked by UMass D staff member Chantel Paveo.
Was there a particular professor at UMass Dartmouth that stood out to you during your academic years?
Absolutely, and he's there today. It's Professor Dr. Ron DePippo. Absolutely phenomenal human being, one of the most intelligent engineers, most capable engineers you could ever meet. And he was able to cross that gap and become a great mentor, a great teacher, and get some very difficult information and some concepts into not only my brain, but my entire class's brain and decades of classes' brains. He's just phenomenal. So thank you so much, Ron.
Scott, I'm told we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. We could not be more proud of you and all your hard work. Fly safe.
Thank you, everybody. It's been a great event. Thank you for visiting.
This is Vince from University of Massachusetts Dartmouth Station. We are now resuming operational audio communications.
Thank you all for participating. Please turn in your seats and wave goodbye to Scott. Turn to the control panel and wave goodbye. Chancellor Johnson, I invite you back to the podium to send us off to the reception with your closing remarks.
It is truly, truly an honor to have an astronaut as one of our own. We have a brief reception out in the lobby for everyone. I won't say Houston, we have landed. I will say UMass Dartmouth, we're ready to take off. Thank you all for being here.